Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Science Speaker Series, featuring our inaugural presenter, the Honourable Kirsty Duncan, Federal Minister of Science and Sport. My name is Peggy Schmeiser, and I'm the Associate Director of the Centre for the Study of Science and Innovation Policy at the Johnson Shoyama Graduate School of Public Policy. It's my pleasure to serve as the MC for this afternoon's event. As we gather here today, I would first like to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis. We pay our respect to the First Nations and the Métis ancestors of this place and reaffirm our relationship with one another. Through activities like this speaker series, CSIP looks to provide opportunities for exchange across sectors about the policy and governance dimensions of science, technology, and innovation. Today, we are honored to have Minister Duncan speak with us about women's engagement in science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM sectors, as a critical element for our country's scientific and societal success. To begin, I would like to recognize the tremendous support and work of colleagues that have made this event possible, including Doug Moen, Murray Fulton, Karen Jester-LaForge, Erica Schindel, Catherine Warden, Anne Ballantyne, Bethany Penn, Jerome Koneshki, and CSIP's director, Peter Phillips. Thanks as well to Tegan Quilicini, the founding coordinator of the 500 Women Scientists YXE Pod, for her collaboration in this work. Through this speaker series, CSIP is pleased to highlight the work of Canadian female scientists as we celebrate their contributions to policy development, dialogue, and prosperity at local, national, and international levels. With this, I would like to invite a dear colleague, an unwavering champion for science and innovation, our Vice President, Research, Dr. Karen Chad, to say a few words on behalf of the University of Saskatchewan.
Well, wow. First time I get to say this to many of you that I haven't seen. Happy New Year, and gosh, what a terrific way to bring in 2019. Thank you very much, Peggy, and indeed it is truly an honor and indeed a great privilege to be part of this very first CSIP-led Women in Science speaker series and to bring greetings on behalf of the University of Saskatchewan. Minister Duncan, it is such a great pleasure, as it always is, to welcome you to our campus and to have you speak to us today on a topic that is important to the future of Canada and hence for the entire globe. On behalf of the University of Saskatchewan, I would like to thank you for your government's leadership and in particular your own personal advocacy in striving to ensure that equity, diversity, and inclusion are a key part of Canada's research agenda. I see that there are also many representatives of our partner research organizations in the audience, and so I would like to pay particular welcome to you all and thank you for your interest and support in advancing inclusive innovation. I am also delighted that our colleagues and our dear friends at the University of Regina are joining us by live streaming of this event. Welcome to you all. To be the university the world needs is the overall aim of our new University of Saskatchewan plan, and it is a bold ambition indeed. So to achieve this goal, we must, as a research community, harness the talents and potential of all of us in order to generate new discoveries across the research spectrum. At the University of Saskatchewan, one of Canada's top research universities, we are committed to a culture of inclusion and collaborative discovery and innovation right across our diverse community, with particular focus on women and Indigenous peoples. Critically important to successful innovation are the areas of science, technology, engineering, and math, the so-called STEM disciplines, areas where the numbers of female and Indigenous faculty are growing, but where female and Indigenous leadership remains relatively low. Of course, we are working to address these gaps through a variety of initiatives, including our Aboriginal Student Achievement Program in the College of Arts and Science, which provides opportunities for Indigenous students to enter diverse STEM-related degree pathways ranging from agriculture to quantum physics. My sincere hope is that this CSEP-led speaker series, which highlights the success of outstanding female role models, will inspire students to pursue research and STEM careers and will inspire faculty and staff to be bold in addressing barriers to inclusive research success. We all play a very vital role in emboldening the curiosity that will enable us to all contribute to a brighter, more sustainable future and to be the university the world needs. For it's not only excellence in diversity, but I commit that excellence is diversity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vice President Chad, for your words and ongoing institutional commitment to inclusion within our university community, especially within STEM fields. Dr. Kirsty Duncan is the Minister of Science and Sport and a Member of Parliament for the riding of Etobicoke North. She holds a doctorate in geography from the University of Edinburgh and is internationally recognized as a leading expert in pandemic influenza, environmental change, and its impact on human health. Her publications include the book, Hunting the 1918 Flu, One Scientist's Search for a Killer Virus. Prior to entering politics, she was an associate professor at the University of Toronto and the University of Windsor, where she taught global environmental processes and medical geography. Minister Duncan is a fierce defender of the environment, having served on the Nobel Prize-winning Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. As Canada's federal science minister and a former researcher herself, Minister Duncan has made it a priority to right the gender balance in Canadian academia. I would now like to welcome Minister Duncan to the stage to deliver her presentation entitled Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion in Research. Following her presentation, I will ask Vice President Chad to join the Minister and me for a brief conversation here on the stage before we conclude with a few remarks by one of our graduate students. Please join me in welcoming Minister Duncan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. And I, too, would like to begin by acknowledging that we are gathered on Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis. This land is a traditional gathering place for many Indigenous peoples whose histories, languages, and cultures continue to enrich our country. Thank you, Dr. Schmeiser, and thank you to you and to everyone in organizing this Women in Science speaker series. It matters. Just think what this series may inspire. More young women considering STEM fields at university or as a career, and one day a young woman will follow in the footsteps of Canada's newest Nobel Prize winner, Professor Donna Strickland. She is only the third woman to win the Physics Prize and the first Canadian female scientist to do so. I want to recognize University President Peter Stoichev It's always a pleasure to work with him, and this speaker series is another example of the important work being done here at the University of Saskatchewan. And Dr. Schmeiser, I would like to officially welcome you back for a day and to welcome wee Liam. So let me start by saying how proud I am to come from our research community. And I'm awed, humbled, and inspired every day by the work you do. 2018 was an absolutely fantastic year for science and research in Canada, with innumerable exciting discoveries by our tremendous researchers. And 2019 is already off to a great start. Just last week, the world heard how Canada's CHIME telescope, located in British Columbia, detected 13 high-speed bursts of radio waves coming from deep space. And the source of those mysterious bursts is unknown, but they appear to be coming from outside our galaxy. How exciting! Merci pour tout ce que vous faites. Et aux étudiants présents, j'ai hâte de voir ce qui vous attend dans l'avenir proche. And to our students, I cannot wait to see what you will accomplish. When the Prime Minister asked me to serve as the Minister of Science, I had one goal: to put our researchers and students at the heart of everything we do. That means ensuring that they have the funding necessary for their research, as well as for their labs, tools, and digital tools they need in the field today. And we have delivered. For science and research, budget 2018 was historic. Our government made the largest investment in science and research, $4 billion over 5 years. That is the largest investment in the history of our country. And on top of that, I know we have many government researchers here today. We invested $2.8 billion in government science infrastructure to provide our researchers with the state-of-the-art facilities. But we committed more than funding. We committed that we would strengthen our research community, that we would broaden it, and ensure that underrepresented groups would be included. Let me ask our professors here and across the country to reflect on your labs, on your graduate students over the last decade, maybe the last 20 years. We know amazing things were happening, yes? But was anyone missing? What ideas might have gone unexplored? What results that might have benefited all Canadians went undiscovered? Think about the first airbags, designed by engineers who were largely male, on prototypes of the male-sized body. You'll remember that it was women and children who were initially injured or killed when the airbags activated. And even today, heart disease in women is underdiagnosed, undertreated, and under-researched. What if more women had been included earlier in research? Would the results have been different? What if we had had more Indigenous researchers and we had listened to elders and communities? What if the LGBTQ2 community had been treated more compassionately at the start of the AIDS pandemic? How quickly we forget that gay men, even men who were suspected of being gay, lost their jobs and were evicted from their apartments. Would the policies of government have been different and the results less devastating had we better included their voices? The point is, broad backgrounds, experiences, ideas, and perspectives generate great research. The questions and methodologies are richer, and the results benefit all Canadians. With this in mind, a lot of my work as Minister of Science focuses on promoting equity, diversity, and inclusion within research. We needed the data to be able to do that, and that's why we brought back a Statistics Canada survey It's called the University and College Academic Staff Survey, or UCAS. It provides our government with important data on full-time faculty at Canadian universities. We can now look at whether women and men or other underrepresented groups are progressing at an equal rate through the academic ranks and whether they are earning equal pay. And that's why we're going to extend this important survey to our part-time faculty and to our colleges. We made changes to our prestigious research chairs, the Canada Excellence Research Chairs and the Kandor Research Chairs. Both programs now have equity and diversity requirements. To get there, I asked our universities to develop detailed equity, diversity, and inclusion action plans, and to be intentional when seeking out the best candidate to fill these important research roles. In other words, cast a wide net. And I've personally made it clear to university presidents that I would instruct my program officials to withhold funding if universities fail to meet their own equity and diversity targets. Ces conversations n'étaient pas faciles. Le changement n'est pas facile, ni rapide, mais il arrive. I am truly heartened by the gains we are already seeing in these areas. For example, a full 60% of our Canada research chairs are women. They were selected through peer review from more than 2,000 applications from around the world. And for the first time in Canadian history, we had 50% women nominated for the Canada research chairs. And the largest percentage of Indigenous, racialized individuals, and persons with disabilities ever. This is really something to celebrate. And our universities and granting councils have been clear. They are succeeding in broadening the diversity of their institutions, and they have maintained their established standards of excellence. Our government also launched a successful national social media campaign to encourage young Canadians, especially girls and young women, to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Check it out, #ChooseScience. So what's coming next? Well, our most recent budget set aside an historic $1.7 billion for our granting councils. I can't wait to see the discoveries that are coming. And we have tied this support to the requirement that they develop plans to ensure the next generation of researchers is more diverse. I'd like to be clear about these requirements. I don't just mean more women. I mean all groups who have traditionally been underrepresented. Indigenous peoples, racialized groups, persons with disabilities, and members of the LGBTQ2 community. There are too many voices that have been left on the sidelines for too long, and it's up to us to change that. And if that makes people uncomfortable, then we have more work to do. We are taking steps to involve more Indigenous voices in research. And this morning, I hope you've seen, we had a wonderful morning at Waniskewen Heritage Park. I announced the recipients of 116 award winners who will each receive $50,000, and they are working to identify new ways of doing research with Indigenous communities. What's exciting is half of those 116 award winners are led by Indigenous researchers or Indigenous organizations, and there is Indigenous governance and leadership in each. These grants support community gatherings and workshops that facilitate dialogue and knowledge sharing. These grants will advance reconciliation with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. So, moving forward, we are implementing a made-in-Canada version of Athena Swan. That's the United Kingdom initiative to include more women in science. But we're going to expand that program to all departments and institutions to ensure other underrepresented groups are included as well. And we will recognize the importance of intersectionality. In fact, before I joined you here today, I had the privilege of hearing from leaders in academia and other sectors what they would like to see in a Canada Athena Swan program. And I'd like to acknowledge President Stoichev again. He facilitated the roundtable, and his presence elevates the importance of working toward inclusion. This was one in a series of roundtable discussions our government has held over the past 6 months to discuss opportunities and challenges. And I've personally hosted numerous of these from coast to coast to coast. We are aiming to launch our pilot Athena Swan this year, so please watch for it. And I thank you in advance for your support. There will also be new grants for higher education institutions to make progress on increasing representation of underrepresented groups. I hope you are as excited as I am by the possibilities. Some of the most rewarding moments in my time as Minister of Science, and for decades before, I hate to admit it's decades, as a researcher, have come from speaking to early career researchers, especially young women, about the importance of science and research. I've worked hard to encourage young women to get excited about research and support them to stay in science and research fields. Why? Because we need their smarts, their ideas, their passion, and their desire to build a better Canada. And we know a career in research can be tough. It can be very lonely at times. I think it helps to hear from someone who cares and someone who has been there before them. Je viens d'une famille qui m'a élevée avec la notion que je pouvais devenir ce que je voulais et j'aurais les mêmes opportunités que mon frère. I come from a family that said I could be anything I wanted, and I had the same opportunities as my brother. But as a woman in science, and like many of you in this room, no doubt, I faced barriers and fewer opportunities than my male colleagues. I was once asked at a faculty staff meeting when I planned on getting pregnant, how deeply personal and illegal. On another occasion, I was given the option of how I wanted to be treated, as a woman or as a scientist. The two are not mutually exclusive. Later, when I asked a university official why I was being paid in the bottom 10th percentile, I was told it was, and I quote, because I was a woman. These challenges can be amplified for racialized groups and persons with disabilities. Systemic challenges do exist, and they limit the contributions of underrepresented communities. That's why I've made it one of my priorities to reverse this pattern of discrimination. My friends, my inspiring friends who are running this speaker series, and I hope this inspires more. We must all be committed to reversing discrimination, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because in a competitive global economy, Canada cannot afford to leave any talent on the sidelines. I believe we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to change the culture of our great, and I do mean great, institutions, to welcome all Canadians into the classroom, the field, and the laboratory. It is exciting to make change, but it's challenging as well, because it's about changing hearts and minds, and not just programs and policies, and that's hard work. We know when women, Indigenous peoples, people with disabilities, racialized groups, and members of the LGBTQ2 community succeed, we all benefit. I'd also like to add that we all share a responsibility to be champions for inclusion. We also all have a responsibility to speak up when we see a lack of diversity, to speak up when a comment or behavior is inappropriate. There can be no silent bystanders. Every time we let an inappropriate comment or behavior pass, we give permission. We all need to be part of this much needed generational change. It matters. I'm eager to get to our discussion, so let me sum up by saying, I hope I can count on all of you to be champions for inclusion. It is our shared responsibility to use our talents to continually build a better research community. And I think our research community is pretty terrific, but we can build better. A better post-secondary educational experience, and ultimately, a better country. And with that, I will say thank you for this invitation. I am absolutely humbled and honored to be here. Merci.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Minister, for that presentation. It is such an honor and so much fun. It is such a joy to have you with us, and it's just so inspiring. To begin this discussion with you and with Vice President Chad, I'd like to share a few indications. You mentioned that you like data. And I wanted to share a few indications of where we find ourselves, just to set the stage for some questions that we'd like to ask. According to a 2018 report by the Canada-United States Council for Advancement of Women Entrepreneurs and Business Leaders, women in North America comprise only 25% of STEM workers and represent only 1 in 8 engineers in Canada. 2016 census data indicates that just under 30% of those in occupations relating to a STEM field of study in Saskatchewan are women. And within STEM occupations, males in the province have a median employment income of over $80,000, far above the female median income of approximately $63,500. Based on this evidence, it is clear that we still have a ways to go if we are to see the full and equal participation and benefits of women in STEM-related sectors. With this in mind, I'm delighted to have an opportunity to ask you both just a few questions with the time we have. So Minister Duncan, if I could begin with a question, just to build on your presentation. You've dedicated your career to science and to supporting and encouraging other women and girls to engage in scientific areas. Building on your earlier comments, can you discuss the importance of this work for you personally? And if there were any particular issues that you could address, what would they be?
Dr. Schmeiser, thank you for the question. And again, I just really want to congratulate you and your colleagues on putting on this series. I have spent 25 years fighting for more women in science. It has been my passion when I was a researcher, and I have to tell you, I loved research. And I loved working with students, and 11 years ago, I made a very hard decision to leave the academy. I had the opportunity to serve the community where I'm born and raised. And I have to go door to door and ask if I could be their member of parliament. And I election in 6 or 7 languages, none of which are my own. And so in taking on this new role, when the Prime Minister asked me to serve as Minister of Science, I wanted to tackle women in science, and everyone said, you can't do it. political suicide. I said, you can't ask me to be a woman scientist and not to do this. Do the barriers still exist? Yes. I love that you start with the data. The data shows the problem. I meet incredible young women across this country, and they inspire me every day. I don't want only to attract them to STEM fields. We want them to stay in STEM fields. We want your ideas. We know research will be stronger if you're part of it. And so I've talked about the things we've done, whether it's bringing back the survey so we have the data, putting on new diversity and equity requirements for our research chairs. There's more work to be done. And I really hope Athena Swan will help to transform the culture. It says, get your data. We're researchers. Get your data. This is our baseline. Let's look where we are today, and let's decide where we want to get to. And the last thing I'll add in is mentorship. My greatest joy was working with young people. It still is. And I've always said to my students, on the hard days, I'm a text away. If I'm out of the country, I'm a text away. Send me a text, I will call, because sometimes all you need is someone on the other end of the line saying, it's okay, I've been there, you'll get through this, tomorrow will be a better day.
Thank you very much for that response. Vice President Chad, as an accomplished researcher yourself and senior administrator at this university, I'm wondering if you can talk about what you see as some of the challenges, but also some of the opportunities for women at Canadian campuses.
Great, thanks very much. A really important question. And I think one that we've been grappling with for many, many years. I think for me, as I'll start with the challenges, for me, if I had to kind of identify the top challenges, in no particular order, I would put them down as follows. The first thing is, I think it's a cultural challenge that we have. And many now are using the phrase unconscious bias. And of course, as we all know, those are social stereotypes, you know, about certain groups of people that individuals we form outside our own conscious awareness. So one of the barriers, the challenges that we have to overcome is that unconscious bias. The second one is, I think, Canada and we at our own universities, we still suffer from an extreme lack of role models. Role models at the level of the faculty, the level of senior administrators, the role modeling in terms of staff, and in terms of the role modeling in terms of our female students. And the last one I think that I would identify as a challenge is what I would term as a traditional system still, or a traditional framework in which we talk about careers and professions. What I think we right now have is a lack of a framework to support women in STEM disciplines. So what we really need is a new system that empowers change, both at the level of the institution, but also at the level of the individual. How do we empower both of those and at the same time? How do we hold ourselves all collectively accountable? How do we ensure that we all have the right programs, services, and supports? How do we monitor our progress? And of course, how do we celebrate that progress and where we are? If I think about the opportunities, I actually think that Canada is in a really unique position right now. It's probably a position we have never been in before. We have a minister now. We have one person who is, for us, that beacon. It's wonderful when we as a country have actually at that level of government have set out to have a leadership position who has the accountability of equity, diversity, and inclusion as a priority of her portfolio. So for me, one of the greatest opportunities for us is we now have leadership of our country. We've stood up bold and courageously as a country to demonstrate our commitment. Here at the University of Saskatchewan, I would say we have the same thing in our president. In terms of, if you look at our strategic plan, in terms of our vision, mission, and value statement, you can see our commitment to diversity and all of that. So the first opportunity for us is demonstrated commitment and accountability at the level of our federal government right down to our university. The second thing is, for me, why this is such a great opportunity for Canada and for this university and many other universities, is that not only do we have that demonstrative commitment by our federal government, but there is also now the development of a national model. As we heard our minister say, is it a made in Canada Athena Swan. And so that is the first time we as a country have actually stood up and said, we are now having a national model. And then I think the last thing is because you have a national model is one thing. I think it's important for us to have a framework. But now, if I know this minister and this government, the model will now lead to implementation and action. But it will end off with also throughout monitoring our progress and, as I said, celebration.
Thank you very, very much, Vice President Chad. Staying with this theme of academia, Minister, I'd like to ask you a question about your career, your personal journey. Given that you've made such tremendous contributions as both a researcher, but also then as a leader, as a national leader in public policy design and implementation, I'm wondering what your transition was like from research to minister, and what advice you would have for female researchers that are interested in influencing or leading policy.
Oh, I love that question. We want, if there are people out here that you are interested in getting involved in public policy, we need good people. We need your input. We'd be happy to talk about that later. When I started teaching at the university when I was 24, and I enjoyed my research. I was, at that time, very heavily involved in climate change research, and I quickly learned that if I was going to have input, I needed to work with government, and I know you have worked in government throughout your career. I needed to be involved with government. I was very much on the science side, looking at climate change and health. But what I love about academia, I love the research side, I love teaching, but I love service. And when the opportunity came up to serve in my community, it's where I'm born and raised. It was a really hard decision. Do you leave something you thought you'd spend your career in? Do you leave everything you know? And I mentioned we're one of the most diverse ridings in the country. I get to learn about the world every day in the community I serve. Literally, I get to learn about the world. So I was 7 years in opposition, and then Prime Minister asked me to serve as Minister of Science. You asked what I would say to people, and I'm going to speak directly to the youth in this room, and to anyone. The youth, take time to dream your greatest dreams. No one ever tells you that. And it's not just about what job you want here, but what's the relationship you want with your family, your friends, what difference do you want to make in your community, the environment. Take that time, and dreams change over time. It's okay to change your careers, it's okay. The other thing is, know there are hard days. I call challenges speed bumps. You have to figure a way over them or around them. And the last one is impossible as a dare. And if someone tells you you can't do something, set out to prove them wrong.
That's wonderful. Thank you. With a few minutes remaining, I thought I would ask you both just one more question. Fairly quickly, if I may, because I'm very very interested in some specifics and some of the data. Again, Vice President Chad, in 2015 and 16, women comprised only 30.7% of Saskatchewan's post-secondary enrollments in STEM discipline. Given your experience, how do you feel we can get more girls and women interested in pursuing STEM disciplines, and particularly research leadership, such as the Canada Research Chairs, where we've heard there's been tremendous progress?
Well, I would say right now, 5 things I would put down as the priorities. Number 1 is I think we have to enhance our exposure to the diversity and the variety of opportunities, not only in terms of the professions, but the environments in which these professions are in. Secondly, I would say, as I mentioned earlier, we have to increase our role models and our champions. We have to figure out what this is going to look like. It's not going to be a one-size-fits-all, but we need to look at across the institution. What do we need at the level of the institution, the level of our colleges, our schools, our research centers, and have a comprehensive approach to that. We have to become very good knitters in terms of that it doesn't happen just at one level. The third one is that I would say is to create infrastructure. What are the programs, services, and supports that we're going to need at the level of the institution and again at the level of the colleges, schools, research centers? So, for example, proactive advising, addressing not only career, but the lifestyle that comes with various careers, outreach and mentoring, academic services, curriculum. In other words, we have to proactively design the infrastructure and implement it to going forward. Fourth, I think we're in a unique role is that we're not going to be able to do this on our own. We need the outreach and the engagement of our community, our local community, whether that is in terms of industry, our not-for-profit, our alumni, etc. Engage our community as well as looking at our K-12 system. How are we going to work with our K-12 system to ensure this fabulous comprehensive pipeline? Oh, hope that was an okay word. And the fourth one is an accountability system. You know, folks, I think we actually have to have the bold and the boldness and the courage to actually put in place an accountability system. How are we going to reward the people that are getting this right? And how are we going to, like our ministers stood up boldly and said, we're going to hold back funding if we're not going to be able to address equity, diversity, and inclusion. And the last one, as I mentioned earlier, as part of this is we have to celebrate and recognize. Celebrate and recognize, celebrate and recognize. And I think that's part of the piece, along with training, etc., to overcome this unconscious bias in this whole culture.
Thank you. And I guess as a final question, Minister, you have identified today, and I've heard you speak at other times where you've spoken about the importance of mentorship and how important that is in this process. And Vice President Chad has just talked as well about celebration and recognition. I just wonder if you could speak for a moment about that, how important you think mentorship is, and any final thoughts you have on what we might do as women in science, women in the academy, to further these efforts.
I think if I look out in this room, all of us would have had, we hope, a champion or a hero we looked up to as we went through our careers. For me, it was very much, I always looked to Marie Curie, but the one who had the really tangible impact was Dr. Roberta Bondar, because Dr. Bondar showed us, taught us to reach for the stars, and we could actually get to the stars. And while I was in Parliament, we had this wonderful recognition of the 25th anniversary of her flight. And what was so terrific to see, when you meet one of your heroes, you hope your hero will be spectacular. Well, my hero, the first people she went to were the children. She wanted to talk to the children and explain why science mattered. And there had been children who were 7 and 8 years old who had been held home from school to watch a documentary so they would know about Dr. Bondar. And the first people she saw were the children. The other tremendous thing, she's made a difference in neurology, in space, in the arts. But I think for her, what she's most proud of is, well, one of the areas she's most proud of is mentorship. And she comes each year, she brings in a group of women researchers, women in government, and she mentors them. And I hope that all of us in this room take time to mentor. I always think I got more out of the mentoring than my students did. I hope they got, but I know what I received.
Wonderful. You have both been such wonderful advocates for young people and for students. And so I'm very pleased that in concluding, we'd like to invite one of our graduate students, Yvonne Ndele, to come up and say a few words. Yvonne is currently a PhD candidate at the Johnson Shoyama Graduate School of Public Policy and a research assistant with our Centre for the Study of Science and Innovation Policy. Her doctoral research investigates the concept of social license in relation to agriculture biotechnology governance. We're delighted to have you join us, Yvonne, if you'd like to say a few words.
Thank you, Dr. Schmeiser. I'd like to take a moment to say thank you, Honourable Minister Duncan and Vice President Chad, for such an inspiring and educative fireside chat on women and girls engaged in scientific fields. I'm truly inspired by your great words and greatly appreciate your unquenchable desire to see women and girls engage and excel in STEM sectors. There are many key ideas I've drawn from your wealth of knowledge today. Among them is the need for equity, diversity, and inclusivity as a part of Canada's research agenda, and on the challenges and opportunities for women in STEM sectors. Vice President Chad noted the cultural challenge or unconscious bias, the lack of role models, and the need for a system that empowers change, both at the level of the institution and at the level of individuals. The one message that really stood out for me this afternoon from Minister Duncan is, take time to dream your greatest dream. Impossible is a dare, and set out to prove anyone wrong who says you can't do something. And so on behalf of the next generation of women and girls engaged in scientific fields, and on behalf of the entire student body, the faculty, partners, and the Centre for Science and Innovation Policy, I'd like to express our heartfelt thanks and deep gratitude to you for accepting to be our inaugural speaker for the Women in Science Lecture Series. Thank you for your motivation to young women and girls, and above all, thank you for honoring us with your presence this afternoon. It's been a great pleasure and a true honor to have you, so thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Yvonne, for sharing your thoughts with us. I would like to conclude today's seminar with one last thank you to Minister Duncan for her words and generosity in joining us. It has been such an absolute pleasure to have you with us. And finally, we would like to encourage all of you to watch for more news about our next Women in Science Speaker Series event coming in March. Given some of the minister's words about mentorship and inspiration, it promises to be an equally inspiring event. We are happy to welcome any media that might be present to meet with Minister Duncan. who will remain here for a few moments on the stage following the conclusion of the program. So thank you again very, very much to all of you for coming out today. And once again, thank you so much, Minister Duncan. Thank you.